things I did. I've done quite a lot of work over the years as a consultant with television, nearly all actually with Steve Humphrey's testimony films. But I was invited to be the consultant for a BBC Two series called The 90s, which was about people aged over 90. And this was, I think it was done in the 1990s. Yes, 1992 to 3, that was. And the producer was Annie Paul, who's an absolutely brilliant person, a really admirable producer. She has a very strong concept of what will work on television and how to get there and so on, but at the same time, she's a really nice human being and treats the people she's interviewing really well, and that's something that doesn't always happen with television. Of course, Steve takes huge trouble with these people, but a lot of the standard producers don't. And it was a very exciting experience, because I was brought in just at the stage when they started, and they were trying to formulate what the programs would be about. And what they had done was they had sort of issued trailers, not trailers, but sort of information about this all around the country, and people were writing in and offering to be interviewed and sending letters and so on. So we got a lot of that stuff, and then they had just begun doing audio interviews with people to sort of try them out. And so we were, talking about able to talk about these people and how they could make programs. And actually, the whole thing evolved. It wasn't that we sat down at the beginning and say we have, these 6 programs, but the first 1 or 2 were sort of obvious, like there were people about marriage, women talking about marriage, and men. There was always more men and more women than men in those programs, because one thing, there's about 5 women alive to every man at that point. But there was sort of like another program on people who didn't marry, women who didn't marry, and so on. Those were sort of like obvious subjects. And then we had one on health, for instance, which I found very valuable, because I was teaching people to do the history of medicine and health. But by the end, you see, it became rather difficult, because we wanted one on migrants, but we couldn't get a spectrum of migrants. There just weren't any viable black. Well, there was one, but he was a rather odd example. There weren't really enough black migrants available. There were women Jewish migrants, yes, but if you wanted the typical West Indian coming to Britain in the 50s, which would have been the obvious thing to have, they just haven't survived. The last programme, I think Annie decided to do on races and race forcing apart, because there was this black man involved. There wasn't an obvious other way of using him. But anyway, but then you see that. So that was the first stage. You got this audio material and notes on that coming in, and notes by the researchers on visiting the interviews, and then you get the preliminary audio-visual material to look at, which is much more crucial, of course. And sitting and talking and discussing that, and then finally you get to the rough cut, which is slightly longer than the real transmission, and where you really have to decide whether it works or not. If it doesn't seem to work, what to do about it. And that was just fascinating, because although I'd done it before, because in a way it's more drastic in a sense. For instance, the program we had on health, Annie had got put in a sequence with one of the first professional social psychiatric workers in the country, and it just had to go because she didn't gel with the other people And it was very interesting because by that point the book, which I also edited, was already in the press. So so we had these people who were in the book who weren't in the programs, and vice versa. There were people in the programs who weren't in the book. I didn't realise that it happened that way. I mean, the final program was only completed a few days before it died. While the book was already available in the shops. But that brought home to me really powerfully how the audiovisual presence is different from the purely oral on the one hand, or the printed on the other. It's an art of work of art, using that kind of material, just as it is using printed extracts from interviews, and it does profoundly affect how you shape material and how you use it. So I found that just fascinating to use it, to use it, and to be involved in it. Is what I'm trying to say. Just one thing I did manage to get them to do, which I was very pleased about, was that when I arrived, they were thinking of using these people like museum exhibits, so that they were just talking about their past. And I said, let's have them now as well. And that really worked very well. So you had like the woman who writes poetry reading one of her poems, pouring a great cup of tea. And then there was the man who still rides his bike, sort of setting out on his bike, and this kind of thing. I think that made quite a lot of difference. So that's one of the things, really felt worthwhile, and tremendously proud of